Have you ever helped a stranger for 5 minutes, only to discover that moment changed your entire future? A light spring rain drifted over Charleston, turning the cobblestone streets into ribbons of reflected gold and silver beneath the afternoon sky. Tourists hurried beneath umbrellas. Street musicians gathered their instruments beneath storefront awnings. The scent of salt water floated inland from the harbor. Emily Foster pulled her light jacket tighter as she crossed the historic square, carrying a canvas tote bag filled with brochures from the visitor center where she worked part-time. It had been a long day already. Her morning shift had ended late, and she still needed to stop by the pharmacy before heading home to check on her grandmother. Money was tight. Time was tighter. Yet as she hurried across the square, a movement near the old fountain caught her attention. A man stood alone in the rain staring at a torn paper map. The wind had ripped one side almost completely away. He turned it in different directions, looking increasingly confused. Most people walked around him without slowing down. Emily almost did the same. Then she noticed the expression on his face. Not frustration, not irritation, genuine confusion. The kind travelers wore when they realized they were completely lost in an unfamiliar city. She hesitated. Her bus would arrive in 12 minutes. Missing it meant waiting nearly an hour for the next one. The practical part of her mind told her to keep walking. Instead, she changed direction and approached him. "Excuse me," she said with a friendly smile. "You look like that map is losing the argument." The man looked up. He was tall, well-dressed in a simple navy jacket, and appeared to be somewhere in his mid-30s. Rain dotted his dark hair. For a second, he seemed surprised someone had stopped. Then he laughed softly. "I think the map surrendered about 10 minutes ago." Emily glanced at the torn paper. "Where are you trying to go?" He pointed to a faded mark. "The Harbor Lantern Bookshop." Emily immediately smiled. "That explains the problem." "Why?" "Because it is nowhere near here." The man looked down at the ruined map. "That would explain why I have been walking in circles." Emily laughed. "Probably." He folded the map with obvious defeat. "Can you point me in the right direction?" She looked toward the bus stop at the end of the street, then back toward the man. The bookstore sat almost 20 minutes away on foot. Giving directions would take several minutes. Getting him there would take longer. Her bus arrived in exactly 9 minutes now. "Honestly," she said, "if I try explaining it, you will get lost again." The man raised an eyebrow. "That bad? That bad?" Emily glanced at the rain, then made a decision. "Come on." "Come on where?" "I will show you." Surprise crossed his face. "You do not have to do that." "Probably not." She adjusted her tote bag. "But Charleston is confusing even with a good map." The man hesitated. "I would hate to inconvenience you." Emily smiled. "Then it is a good thing I am volunteering." Something about the answer made him laugh again. Together, they started walking through the historic district. Rain tapped softly against old brick buildings. Horse-drawn carriages rolled along distant streets. The city seemed to slow around them. Along the way, Emily pointed out hidden courtyards, historic churches, and colorful houses tucked between larger buildings. "You know a lot about this place," the man observed. "Occupational hazard." "Tour guide." Emily nodded. "Part-time." "And what do you do the rest of the time?" She smiled. "Try to pay bills." The honesty caught him off guard. "Fair answer." Emily laughed. "Most honest answer I have." As they continued walking, conversation came surprisingly easily. The stranger introduced himself only as Liam. He asked thoughtful questions. Not the usual tourist questions about landmarks or restaurants. Questions about the city itself. Its history. Its people. Its hidden corners. Emily found herself enjoying the conversation far more than expected. Eventually, they reached a narrow street lined with independent shops. At the far end stood a small bookstore with a blue awning. "There," Emily said. "Harbor Lantern Bookshop." Liam looked at the building, then back at her. "You walked all this way just to help a stranger find a bookstore?" Emily shrugged. "You looked lost." For a brief moment, something changed in his expression. Gratitude. Genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Emily." She blinked. "I do not remember telling you my name." Liam pointed toward the visitor center badge hanging from her jacket. Emily looked down and laughed. "Right. Still," he said quietly. "Thank you." Emily checked the time and immediately groaned. "Oh no." "What?" "I missed my bus." Liam looked genuinely concerned. "Because of me?" She smiled. "Because I make questionable decisions." Yet as she turned to leave, neither of them realized this unexpected meeting was not ending. It was only beginning. Emily spent the next 53 minutes sitting alone on a weathered bench beside the bus stop, watching rainwater collect along the edges of the street. Missing the bus should have irritated her. Normally it would have. Every delayed minute meant arriving home later. Every delay carried consequences when someone depended on her. Yet her thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger with the torn map. Liam. There was something unusual about him. Not because of the way he dressed. Charleston welcomed visitors from everywhere. Not because he was handsome. Emily barely noticed things like that anymore. Life had trained her to focus on practical concerns. No, what stayed with her was the way he listened. Most tourists asked questions while waiting for their turn to speak. Liam seemed genuinely interested in every answer. The observation followed her all the way home. Her small apartment sat above a bakery near the historic district. The scent of fresh bread drifted through the floorboards almost every evening. Normally it felt comforting. Tonight she climbed the stairs with tired legs and an increasingly guilty conscience. Her grandmother sat in a recliner near the window reading a library book when Emily entered. "You missed your bus again, did you not?" Emily laughed. "How do you always know?" "Because you always make room in your schedule for everyone except yourself." Emily kissed her grandmother's forehead and carried a paper pharmacy bag into the kitchen. A tourist needed help. And naturally you volunteered. Naturally. Her grandmother smiled knowingly. "One day that habit will change your life." Emily rolled her eyes affectionately. "That sounds like something from a movie." The best things usually do. The next morning arrived too quickly. Emily worked an early shift at the visitor center greeting travelers, answering questions, and handing out brochures. The steady stream of visitors rarely stopped. Families, couples, retirees, students. Everyone wanted recommendations. Everyone wanted directions. Around noon, she finally stepped outside for a short lunch break. The spring weather had improved dramatically. Sunlight reflected across colorful storefront windows. Street performers entertained tourists near the square. Emily purchased a sandwich from a small cafe and sat beneath an old oak tree. For the first time all day, she allowed herself to relax. "I was hoping I would find you here." Emily nearly dropped her sandwich. She looked up. Liam stood several feet away holding a fresh city map. For a second, she genuinely wondered if she had imagined him. "You are back." He smiled. That sounded almost disappointed. "No," Emily laughed. "Just surprised." Liam held up the map. "I decided to invest in better navigation technology." Emily noticed several bright red markings across the paper. "What happened to that?" A local expert made recommendations. Emily smiled despite herself. Yesterday, she had circled several locations worth visiting before sending him toward the bookstore. Liam sat on the opposite end of the bench. "I owe you another thank you." "For what?" "You missed your bus because of me." Emily shrugged. "Not the end of the world." Still, he handed her a coffee cup. "Peace offering." Emily accepted it cautiously. "You remembered what I ordered?" "Large coffee. 2 sugars." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You pay attention." "I try to." The conversation flowed naturally after that. Liam asked about local landmarks. Emily answered. Emily asked what brought him to Charleston. Liam claimed he needed a break from work. The answer seemed deliberately vague, but she chose not to press. Everyone carried things they preferred not to discuss. 30 minutes passed before either noticed. Emily eventually glanced at the time and stood abruptly. "I need to get back." Liam rose as well. "Of course." She started walking away before stopping. Because some people pass through a city only once. Others keep finding reasons to come back. Over the next several days, Emily began noticing a pattern. Each time he greeted her with the same easy smile. Each time he carried the now famous city map covered in red markings she had drawn herself. "You are still using that thing?" Emily asked one afternoon when she found him studying it beneath a large oak tree. Liam glanced down at the folded map. "Of course. You know phones exist, right? Phones do not come with personal recommendations." Emily laughed. "Fair point." He tapped one of the red circles she had drawn near the harbor. "This bakery was excellent, by the way." "Told you." And the bookstore owner spent 20 minutes recommending novels. "Also told you." Liam smiled. "You seem very invested in being right." "I am a tour guide. It comes with the job." The conversation felt effortless. Familiar. Strange considering they were technically still strangers. Yet each meeting revealed another small piece of the other person. Liam learned that Emily volunteered at community events whenever she had free time. Emily learned that Liam traveled often but rarely talked about work. He answered questions politely without revealing much. Normally, that would have bothered her. Instead, she found it intriguing. One warm Friday afternoon, Liam appeared at the visitor center carrying 2 iced coffees. Emily immediately narrowed her eyes. This is becoming suspicious. What is? You keep showing up. She laughed. I knew it. They walked through the historic district together while Emily finished her lunch break. Street musicians performed beneath colorful balconies. Horse-drawn carriages rolled slowly past old brick buildings. The city seemed alive with movement and stories. Liam listened carefully whenever Emily spoke about local history. Most tourists wanted quick facts. He wanted details. You really love this city, he observed. Emily looked around at the streets she had known her entire life. I do. Why? The question surprised her. Nobody had asked it before. Because it feels alive. She smiled softly. Every building has a story. Every street remembers something. Liam watched her expression. That sounds like someone who belongs here. Emily shrugged. Maybe. They reached a small overlook above the harbor. Boats drifted across the water while sunlight reflected off gentle waves. Emily pulled a folded map from her tote bag. Unlike the tourist version Liam carried, this one looked worn from years of use. Red markings covered nearly every corner. Notes appeared in the margins. Small arrows connected locations throughout the city. Liam studied it with curiosity. That is not a normal map. Emily laughed. No, what is it? Her expression softened immediately. My future. Liam looked up. Your future. She nodded. Every red mark is a place I would include if I ever started my own tour company. Liam glanced back at the map. You want your own business. Someday. Emily traced one of the routes with her finger. Most tourists only see the famous places. I want to show them the city people actually live in. She pointed toward a narrow side street. The family bakery that survived 3 generations. Another mark. The bookstore nobody advertises. Another. The hidden courtyard where local musicians play every Saturday. Liam listened carefully. Emily rarely talked about this dream. Most people dismissed it as unrealistic. He did not. It sounds amazing, he said. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. You really think so? Absolutely. Emily folded the map and smiled. You might be the first person who did not laugh. Then everyone else is making a mistake. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The harbor breeze carried the scent of salt water across the overlook. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell echoed through the city. Emily looked toward Liam and felt something shift. Trust. Not complete. Not yet. But growing. She had no way of knowing that the man standing beside her would remember every red mark on that map. And she certainly had no idea that the future she imagined so carefully was already becoming important to him too. The red marks on Emily's map slowly became part of Liam's daily routine. Over the following week, he visited nearly every place she had recommended. Not because he needed directions anymore. Not because he was trying to fill time. He simply enjoyed seeing the city through her eyes. One afternoon, he found himself standing inside a tiny bookstore tucked between 2 historic buildings. The owner immediately recognized the map in his hands. You know Emily? The older man asked. Liam smiled. I do. The owner nodded approvingly. Good person. Liam noticed something interesting. Every time he mentioned Emily's name around the city, people smiled. The bakery owner smiled. The musicians in the courtyard smiled. The elderly woman who managed a small antique shop smiled. Emily had spent years building relationships without realizing the impression she left behind. The realization stayed with him. A few days later, he found her finishing a shift at the visitor center just before sunset. The sky above Charleston glowed orange and gold. You are becoming predictable, Emily said as she stepped outside. Liam looked surprised. How? Every time I leave work, you appear somewhere nearby. He laughed. That sounds suspicious. Very. Emily adjusted her tote bag. Fortunately for you, I am terrible at being suspicious. Good. That was not a compliment. Together they walked toward the waterfront. The harbor reflected the fading sunlight like polished glass. Sailboats drifted lazily in the distance. Around them, tourists snapped photographs while locals enjoyed the cooler evening air. Can I ask you something? Liam said. Emily glanced at him. Depends. On what? Whether the question is weird. Fair. He smiled. What made you start helping strangers? Emily looked genuinely confused. What do you mean? The day we met. Most people would have pointed toward a street and kept walking. Emily thought for a moment. Honestly, always. She shrugged. My grandmother taught me that 5 minutes of kindness can change somebody's entire day. Liam listened carefully. So you help everyone? Emily laughed. Not everyone. Just lost tourists. Mostly lost tourists. They both laughed. Then her expression softened. Life is difficult enough already. She looked out toward the harbor. If I can make it easier for someone, even for a few minutes, why would I not? The simplicity of the answer affected him more than she realized. Later that evening, they stopped at a small coffee shop hidden on one of the side streets Emily loved. The owner greeted her by name. The usual, he asked. Emily nodded. Please. Liam smiled. Everyone knows you. Occupational hazard. Or maybe you are just impossible to forget. Emily rolled her eyes, but could not hide her smile. They carried their drinks outside and sat beneath strings of hanging lights. For a while they talked about everything and nothing. Favorite books, childhood memories, places they hoped to visit someday. Eventually the conversation drifted toward the future. What would you do if money was not a problem? Liam asked. Emily laughed immediately. That is easy. The tour company. Exactly. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out the folded map again. Liam noticed how carefully she handled it. Like something valuable. Every route is here, she explained. Food tours, history tours, walking tours, local music tours. Her eyes brightened as she spoke. I want visitors to experience the city the way residents do. Liam studied her expression. Passion transformed her completely. You have really thought this through. For years. She smiled sadly. Thinking is free. Liam looked at the map covered in red ink. Every line represented effort. Every mark represented hope. I think you will do it. Emily shook her head. You always say that. Because I mean it. For a brief moment their eyes met. The noise of the city seemed to fade around them. Emily looked away first. Her heart was suddenly beating faster than it should have been. She told herself it was nothing. Just friendship. Just conversation. Yet as she walked home later that night, she found herself smiling for no reason. And several blocks away, Liam stood looking at the map she had accidentally left folded on the cafe table. He carefully picked it up, studying every red mark once again. Then he smiled. Because without realizing it, Emily had already given him something far more valuable than directions. She had given him a reason to keep coming back. The following week brought something neither of them expected. Distance. Not because they wanted it. Because life suddenly became busy. Emily spent several days helping organize a community heritage festival that attracted visitors from across the state. Every available hour disappeared beneath schedules, phone calls, and last-minute planning. Meanwhile, Liam seemed to vanish completely. No surprise appearances. No coffee deliveries. No unexpected conversations beside the harbor. At first, Emily barely noticed. Then she noticed far too much. On Thursday afternoon, she caught herself looking toward the square where they first met. On Friday, she walked past Harbor Lantern Bookshop and wondered whether he might be inside. By Saturday, she finally admitted something uncomfortable. She missed him. The realization annoyed her immediately. They barely knew each other. Yet somehow his absence left Charleston feeling slightly different. Quieter. Less colorful. Late Saturday evening, after the festival ended, Emily sat alone on a bench overlooking the waterfront. The city glowed beneath strings of lights reflected across the harbor. A cool breeze carried the scent of salt water through the air. For the first time all week, she had nowhere she needed to be. She pulled out her folded map and reviewed notes for future tour routes. New ideas filled the margins. New locations. New stories. New possibilities. I was starting to think Charleston banned me. Emily looked up so quickly she nearly dropped the map. Liam stood a few feet away holding 2 cups of coffee. Relief appeared inside her before she could stop it. You disappeared. The words escaped faster than intended. Liam smiled. That sounds dangerously close to concern. Emily rolled her eyes. It sounds like observation. Fair enough. He handed her one of the coffees and sat beside her. For a moment neither spoke. The simple familiarity felt strangely comforting. Where have you been? Emily finally asked. Liam looked toward the water. Work. You always say that. Because it is usually true. She studied him carefully. You know, for someone who asks a lot of questions, you answer very few. Liam laughed. That is probably fair. Emily took a sip of coffee. One day I am going to figure you out. That sounds threatening. It is a promise. Their laughter drifted across the quiet waterfront. Then Liam noticed the map resting in her lap. More red markings had appeared since the last time he saw it. You have been working on it. Emily looked down at the map and smiled. Every chance I get. Liam traced one of the new routes with his eyes. What is this one? Her expression brightened immediately. A local music walk. She pointed towards several locations. Small venues. Street performers. Places tourists never find on their own. Another route. Food and history combined. Another. Hidden gardens and courtyards. Liam listened carefully as she described each idea. The passion in her voice transformed every ordinary location into something special. Eventually, he asked the question he had been carrying for days. What would happen if someone offered to help? Emily looked at him. Help how? With the business. She considered it carefully. Depends. On what? Whether they believe in the dream or just feel sorry for me. The answer surprised him. There is a difference? Emily laughed softly. A huge difference. She folded the map. Pity disappears when things become difficult. Her gaze drifted toward the harbor lights. Belief stays. Liam remained quiet for several seconds. Then he nodded slowly. That is a good answer. Emily smiled. You say that a lot too. Because you give good answers. Another comfortable silence settled between them. Around them, Charleston continued moving at its own unhurried pace. Boats drifted through the harbor. Music floated from a nearby restaurant patio. Somewhere in the distance, church bells marked the passing hour. Emily glanced toward Liam. Can I ask you something? Depends. On what? Whether the question is weird. She laughed. You stole that. I learned from the best. Emily shook her head with amusement. Then her expression softened. Why do you keep coming back? The question hung between them. Liam looked out across the dark water. For a brief moment, he considered telling her the truth. Not all of it. Just enough. Instead, he smiled. Maybe Charleston feels different now. Emily studied him. Something about the answer felt important. Yet before she could ask more, Liam stood and offered his hand. Come on. Where? I want to show you something. Emily hesitated, then accepted his hand. Neither of them realized that the path they were walking toward was leading much closer to the truth than either expected. The place Liam wanted to show her turned out to be the old Maritime Exchange building overlooking the harbor. The historic structure had recently been renovated and reopened for special events. Emily followed him through large wooden doors and into a grand hall filled with warm lighting and elegant displays celebrating Charleston's history. I did not know this place was open tonight, she said. Liam smiled. It is hosting a tourism development event. Emily stopped walking. Tourism development? Yes. Suddenly, she felt underdressed. You probably should have mentioned that. You look fine. That is not the point. Liam only smiled and continued toward the main ballroom. Inside, hundreds of guests filled the room. City officials, business owners, investors, journalists, and tourism leaders moved between displays and presentation screens. Emily immediately felt out of place. She worked at a visitor center. These were people who funded projects, launched companies, and made decisions that shaped entire industries. Maybe I should leave, she whispered. Why? Liam asked. Because I do not belong here. He looked genuinely surprised. Emily, you belong here more than most people. Before she could respond, a voice echoed through the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Conversations slowly faded. Guests moved toward rows of chairs facing a large stage. Liam turned toward Emily. Come with me. She followed him through the crowd until they reached seats surprisingly close to the front. Her confusion only grew. How did you get these? Liam opened his mouth to answer. Then someone called his name. Mr. Parker. Emily froze. The woman approaching them wore a professional business suit and carried a tablet. She smiled politely. The mayor is ready whenever you are. Liam nodded. Thank you. The woman walked away. Emily stared at him. Mr. Parker? For the first time since they met, Liam looked uncomfortable. Emily. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Applause filled the room. An announcer stepped forward. Tonight we are honored to introduce the primary sponsor behind several major tourism initiatives launching across the Southeast. Emily felt her stomach tighten. Something was wrong. Something she had completely missed. The announcer smiled toward the audience. Please welcome entrepreneur, philanthropist, and founder of Parker Global Ventures, Mr. Liam Parker. The room erupted into applause. Emily stopped breathing. Around her, hundreds of people stood to their feet. Cameras turned toward the front row. Business leaders smiled. Journalists prepared their notebooks. And beside her, Liam slowly stood. Her Liam. The tourist with the torn map. The man who claimed he needed directions. The man who spent weeks wandering Charleston asking questions. The man she trusted. Emily stared in disbelief as he walked toward the stage. Every conversation replayed inside her mind at once. The vague answers about work. The unexplained disappearances. The way people occasionally recognized him. The expensive watch she once noticed but ignored. The confidence. The calm. Suddenly everything made sense. Liam stepped onto the stage as applause continued. Large screens displayed his photograph and company logo. The audience listened attentively as he began speaking about community investment, tourism partnerships, and economic development. Emily heard almost none of it. Her heart pounded too loudly. She felt foolish, embarrassed, hurt. Weeks of friendship suddenly looked completely different. Had any of it been real? Had he actually needed directions that first day? Or had she simply been another interesting experience in a city he could afford to visit whenever he wanted? Liam's eyes found her briefly from the stage. The moment their gazes met, he knew. He knew she had discovered everything. He knew exactly how this looked. Emily stood abruptly. The movement startled several people nearby. Without waiting another second, she turned and walked toward the exit. The applause faded behind her. The grand ballroom disappeared. She pushed through the doors and stepped into the quiet hallway beyond. Her emotions collided all at once. Confusion, anger, disappointment. Somewhere beneath all of it was sadness. Because the person she thought she knew had never truly existed. A few moments later, footsteps echoed behind her. Emily did not need to turn around. She already knew who it was. Emily, wait. Liam's voice followed her down the hallway. She stopped, but did not turn around immediately. The elegant sounds of the event drifted faintly through the closed ballroom doors behind them. Applause, music, conversations. It all felt impossibly far away now. Slowly, she faced him. For the first time since they met, there was no trace of the relaxed tourist she thought she knew. The man standing before her carried the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms, investors, and decisions worth millions of dollars. Somehow that made everything worse. How long? Emily asked. Liam frowned slightly. How long what? How long have you known exactly who you are while pretending not to? The question landed hard. Liam took a breath. From the beginning. Emily laughed once. It was not a happy sound. At least you are honest now. Emily. No, she shook her head. You do not get to say my name like everything is normal. Hurt flashed across his face. Nothing about this was fake. Really? Her voice rose slightly. Because from where I am standing, it feels pretty fake. Liam stepped closer. The conversations were real. The conversations happened because I thought you were a lost tourist. Silence settled between them. Emily folded her arms tightly. Did you actually need directions that day? Liam hesitated. The hesitation told her everything. Wow. She looked away. I cannot believe this. I was lost. Emily looked back at him. In Charleston? No, his answer surprised her. In my life. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Emily shook her head again. That sounds like something people say when they get caught. Liam accepted the criticism without arguing. Maybe. The honesty only frustrated her more. You asked me questions about my dreams. Because I cared about the answers. You followed me around the city. Because I wanted to spend time with you. And you never once thought it might be important to mention that you own a company worth more money than I will earn in 10 lifetimes. Liam looked genuinely troubled. I thought about it constantly. Emily stared at him. Then why did you not tell me? For several seconds, he searched for the right words. Because every time people find out who I am, something changes. Emily immediately laughed. You mean they treat you differently? Yes. Maybe because you are different. The words hit harder than she intended. Liam looked away briefly. That is exactly what I was afraid of. Emily felt anger mixing with disappointment. Do you know what hurts? She asked quietly. It is not the money. Liam listened. It is not even the fact that you kept a secret. Her voice softened. It is that I trusted you. The admission hung heavily between them. I trusted the version of you I knew. Liam's expression tightened. That version was real. I do not know that anymore. Those words seemed to take something out of him. Emily could see it. Yet she could not stop. Every conversation feels different now. She looked down at the folded map, still clutched in her hand. Every memory feels different. Liam noticed the map immediately. The red markings. The notes. The routes she dreamed of turning into a business someday. Emily, the things you told me matter. To who? She asked. To the billionaire investor? To me. The answer came instantly. Honest. Unfiltered. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to believe him. That was the problem. Despite everything, she still saw glimpses of the man who bought coffee, listened carefully, and remembered small details nobody else noticed. But trust, once cracked, was difficult to rebuild. I need space, she said quietly. Liam nodded immediately. Okay. Do not show up at the visitor center. Another nod. Okay. Do not wait outside coffee shops. Okay. And do not try to solve this with money. Something flashed across his face. Understanding. I would not do that. Emily studied him. For the first time all evening, she believed him completely. Good. Neither moved. The distance between them felt far greater than the few feet separating them. Finally, Emily turned toward the exit. I am sorry, Liam said softly behind her. She paused. Not because the apology fixed anything. Because she knew he meant it. I know, she replied. Then she walked away. Outside, the night air felt cooler than before. Charleston's harbor lights shimmered across the water in the distance. Emily stood alone for a moment staring at the city she loved. Somewhere behind her, inside that beautiful historic building, Liam Parker returned to an audience that admired him. Yet for the first time in years, success felt strangely empty. Because the one person whose opinion mattered most was walking away. And for the first time since arriving in Charleston, he had no idea how to find his way back. The next 3 weeks passed without a single message from Liam. At first, Emily expected him to appear somewhere unexpected. Outside the visitor center. Near the harbor. Standing beside the bookstore pretending coincidence had brought him there again. He never did. The absence should have made things easier. Instead, it left an uncomfortable emptiness she could not ignore. Charleston remained beautiful. The streets remained familiar. Yet something felt missing. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Emily finished work and walked home beneath a gray sky. Her grandmother sat at the kitchen table, sorting old photographs when she arrived. You look distracted, her grandmother observed immediately. Emily sighed. I am fine. That means you are definitely not fine. Emily laughed despite herself. When did you become a detective? Around the same time you became terrible at hiding your feelings. The conversation lingered with her long after dinner. She told herself she was upset about being deceived. That part was true. But another truth existed beneath it. She missed him. Not the businessman. Not the millionaire. The man who listened when she talked about hidden courtyards and forgotten bookstores. The man who remembered details nobody else noticed. Several days later, an envelope arrived at the visitor center addressed to Emily. There was no return address. Her stomach tightened immediately. She recognized the handwriting. Inside, she found a single folded sheet of paper. No letter. No apology. Just a map. Her map. The same tourist map covered in red markings she thought she had lost the night of the tourism event. Emily stared at it in surprise. Every route remained exactly as she remembered. Every handwritten note. Every dream. Attached to the map was a small card containing only one sentence. The city deserves to see itself through your eyes. Nothing else. No signature. No request for forgiveness. No attempt to start a conversation. Emily folded the map carefully and slipped it into her bag. For reasons she could not explain, the gesture affected her more than any grand apology could have. A week later, Charleston announced a major tourism initiative. Local news stations covered the story. Business journals discussed investment plans. Most residents barely paid attention. Emily certainly did not. She was too busy helping visitors navigate the busy spring season. Then one afternoon, her supervisor rushed into the office holding a newspaper. Emily. She looked up. What? You need to see this. Confused, Emily accepted the paper. A large photograph filled the center of the page. Her breath caught instantly. The image showed several city officials standing beside a newly unveiled tourism project. Behind them hung a giant display map. Her map. Emily stared in disbelief. Every red route she created had been professionally reproduced. Every hidden location remained included. Every local business she loved appeared highlighted. Beneath the photograph, the article explained the project. A new community tourism program would promote small businesses, local artists, independent bookstores, family-owned restaurants, and neighborhood landmarks often overlooked by traditional tourism campaigns. Emily read the article twice, then a third time. One sentence finally caught her attention. The initiative had been funded entirely through a private partnership organized by Parker Global Ventures. Liam. Suddenly everything made sense. He had not ignored her dreams. He had listened. Every conversation, every route, every red mark. Her supervisor smiled. This sounds exactly like the tours you are always talking about. Emily looked down at the newspaper. It is. A few days later, she received another envelope. This one contained an invitation. Opening ceremony. Charleston Community Tourism Center. Saturday. Noon. Emily almost threw it away. Almost. Yet curiosity won. Saturday arrived bright and warm. Crowds filled the waterfront district as Emily approached the newly renovated tourism center. The building overlooked the harbor and featured exhibits celebrating local history, culture, music, and businesses. She stepped inside and immediately froze. Mounted across the main wall stood a giant framed version of her original map. Every red mark remained exactly where she placed it. Every handwritten note had been preserved. Visitors studied the display while reading descriptions of local attractions. Emily moved closer. Beneath the map sat a small plaque. It read, "Inspired by someone who showed a city its hidden treasures." Emotion tightened her chest. "I was hoping you would come." The voice behind her was familiar. Emily turned slowly. Liam stood a few feet away. No stage. No cameras. No audience. Just Liam. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Emily looked back toward the map. "You used every route." Liam nodded. "Every single one." "Why?" His answer came quietly. "Because they were good." Emily laughed softly through unexpected emotion. "That is your explanation?" "It is the truth." For the first time since the reveal, she saw the same man who stood lost beside a fountain holding a torn map. And for the first time, the distance between those two versions of him no longer felt impossible to cross. For a long moment, neither Emily nor Liam moved. Around them, visitors continued exploring the tourism center. Families studied exhibits. Travelers examined maps. Local business owners spoke proudly about their neighborhoods. Yet everything seemed quieter somehow. Simpler. Emily looked up at the giant display once more. The red lines she had drawn late at night, while sitting at her kitchen table, now stretched across an entire wall. Her ideas no longer belonged only to her imagination. They belonged to the city. "You really listened," she said softly. Liam smiled. "I told you I did." Emily looked back at him. For the first time since discovering the truth, she allowed herself to see both versions of him at once. The businessman who stood on stages and funded projects, and the man who wandered through Charleston carrying a torn map and asking questions about hidden bookstores. Somehow both were real. "You should have told me," she said quietly. Liam nodded immediately. "I know. I would have been angry anyway." "Probably." Emily laughed despite herself. "Definitely." The sound broke the tension that had existed between them for weeks. Liam smiled. "That sounds more accurate." They spent the afternoon walking through the center together. Every room reflected something Emily loved about Charleston. Local music, independent businesses, historic neighborhoods, community stories. She recognized dozens of ideas pulled directly from conversations they shared. By the time they reached the rooftop terrace overlooking the harbor, the distance between them felt noticeably smaller. "You know," Emily said as they watched sailboats crossing the water below, "my grandmother still thinks this sounds like a movie." Liam laughed. "She may not be wrong." Emily smiled and shook her head. "I still cannot believe any of this happened." "Neither can I." For once, his answer sounded completely sincere. The following months brought changes neither expected. The tourism initiative became a success almost immediately. Visitor numbers increased. Local businesses reported growth. Independent artists and musicians gained new audiences. Most importantly, Charleston residents embraced the project because it reflected their city honestly. Emily eventually accepted a leadership role, helping expand the program. For the first time in her life, she was being paid to share the stories she loved. The work never felt like work. Meanwhile, her relationship with Liam slowly rebuilt itself. No disguises. No secrets. No hidden identities. Just honesty. It turned out honesty suited them surprisingly well. They spent weekends exploring small towns along the coast. Shared dinners with Emily's grandmother. debated books inside Harbor Lantern Bookshop, argued playfully about coffee, maps, and who gave the worst directions. Life became wonderfully ordinary. 1 year later, Charleston hosted an anniversary celebration for the tourism initiative. The entire city seemed to participate. String lights decorated streets. Musicians performed in public squares. Food vendors lined the waterfront. Emily stood near the original map display inside the tourism center, greeting visitors and answering questions. She loved watching people discover the routes for the first time. "Excuse me." The familiar voice made her smile before she even turned around. Liam stood beside her wearing a dark jacket and a strangely nervous expression. Emily immediately noticed. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing. You are nervous." "I am not." "You absolutely are." Liam sighed. "You always know. Because you become terrible at hiding it." She folded her arms. "What is going on?" Instead of answering, Liam held out a folded map. Emily stared at it in surprise. It was the original, the worn paper map she had marked with red ink all those months ago. "I thought this was in storage." "Not tonight." He unfolded it carefully. Additional red markings appeared near the bottom. New notes. New routes. Emily frowned. "I do not remember drawing these." "You did not." Her confusion grew. Liam pointed toward the final mark. A small red circle drawn beside a location near the harbor. "That is new." "Yes." "What is there?" Liam smiled softly. "The destination." Before Emily could ask another question, he dropped to one knee. The world seemed to stop. Visitors nearby immediately noticed. Conversations faded. Someone gasped. Emily covered her mouth in shock. Liam opened a small velvet box. Inside rested a beautiful ring that caught the evening light. "The first time we met, you gave directions to a stranger who did not deserve that much kindness," he said quietly. Emotion filled his voice. "You changed my life long before you knew who I was." Tears appeared in Emily's eyes. Liam continued. "Every red mark on this map led somewhere important, but none of them compare to where you led me." The harbor lights shimmered through the windows behind him. "Emily Foster, will you marry me?" She laughed through tears almost immediately. "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." Applause erupted throughout the room. Visitors cheered. Staff members celebrated. Emily barely noticed any of it. Her attention remained fixed on Liam as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Months later, a framed display appeared near the entrance of the tourism center. Inside the frame rested the original map covered in red markings. Beneath it sat a small plaque. It read, "Sometimes helping a lost stranger leads you exactly where you were meant to go." And every time Emily passed it, she smiled. Because she knew something most people never discover. The most important destinations in life are rarely the ones marked on a map.